Welcome to today's program, Creating Powerful Resumes. My name is Marshall Brown, a career and executive coach based in Washington, D.C. I am all about helping people to get clear, get focused, and get ahead. So what I want to provide you with today are some tips to create a powerful resume that's going to help you to get focused and get ahead. So before we talk about a powerful resume, let's talk about what a decent resume is, which I'm sure many of you have. A decent resume is one where you outline your skills, your qualifications, and your attributes, right? So that's a decent resume. What I'm suggesting today is that you want to develop a powerful resume, one that is very focused. You're using marketing language and you are selling your unique value, what it is that you have to offer. Traditionally, resumes are written from the perspective of what you have to offer. What you want to be able to do, though, is to align what you have to offer and what the employer is looking for. So here's a very simple way to do it. You assess what your skills are. You assess what your education, your experience, your attributes, your accomplishments are. That's your assessment. You then look at what the employer is looking for. What's the skills, the education? What are the problems that they have? And where those two meet, that's the powerful resume that I'd like you to get to. But let's talk about the sections of a typical resume, whether you're entry level or more senior level. So at the top of your resume, you're going to have your contact information, your name, your address, how they can reach you, whether it be a home phone or a cell phone. You're going to have your email address. By the way, when it comes to email addresses, I encourage you and I suggest that you have a professional personal email address. I'm not saying that you use your current employer's address. You want to have a professional personal email address. And by the way, don't make it, your kids' names at Gmail or AOL.com. Have a professional personal email for yourself. The same thing, by the way, when it comes to your voicemail on your cell phone or on your home phone. Make sure it's not the kids in the background saying hello or one of those little cutesy things where you have your dog barking in the background. Make it a professional sounding voicemail and email address. Now, something else I'm going to mention to you here, and I'm seeing more and more of this. For many of my clients, they're putting their LinkedIn URL in their contact information as a hyperlink, so that a hiring manager, a human resource person who's ever looking at your resume, when they're looking at it electronically, they can click on that, it takes them right to your LinkedIn page. I would encourage you only to include it if you have a strong LinkedIn profile, though. If you haven't developed your LinkedIn profile, if you don't have recommendations on your LinkedIn profile yet, I would not suggest you use it. So that's the top section of your resume, your contact information. Next section, typically, a summary of qualifications or a career profile. Whatever you choose to call it, show the breadth of your experience under your summary. Notice I didn't say anything about an objective. I'm not a big believer in having an objective. If you think about it, why would you have an objective that says something like, I'm seeking a senior level human resource position? Why else would you be applying for the position? Right? It's a waste of space. Don't have an objective at the top of your resume. It should be more of a summary of qualifications that talks about the breadth of your experience and, again, why you are the best person to help them solve their problems. Now, having just said that about not having a career objective, if you're in more of an entry-level position, then perhaps you want to use an objective. But typically, even for some of my entry-level folks, I don't have them have an objective. You want to show them from the very beginning why you are the best person to help them solve their problems and what your qualifications are that will back that up. So having a strong summary of qualifications, your expertise. That's a great place, by the way, to show what some of the core competencies are that you bring to the table. Which, again, remember we talked about not only what you have to offer, but what the employer is looking for. In this summary of qualifications, great place to show the core competencies that you have and what they are looking for. They see it right off the bat. Oh, this is what so-and-so brings to the table. I need to look at their resume in greater detail. Trust me, I talked to enough hiring managers and human resource people to know if you don't engage them early on, they won't read the rest of your resume. What's great about having a summary of qualifications is that you can change it based on the job description. You might have 6, 8 bullets under your summary of qualifications that show your expertise. Based on the job description, you cut and paste in other ones. It's not like in the past where you had to retype your whole resume. It's easy to do a resume that is customized to the job description. That, again, is going to make you have a powerful resume. So, we've covered summary of qualifications. Next section typically is your professional experience. Some people call it a career history. Again, I don't really care what you call it, but list it as your experience. Obviously, your most current employer would be listed first, your current position, with your responsibilities and your accomplishments. That leads back to your summary of qualifications. So in your summary of qualifications, if you're saying you have marketing experience and membership experience and human resource experience, everything below that in your education and in your professional experience should talk about the accomplishments. Now, important piece to note here. You want to lead with your active verbs, not responsible for directing. Lead with your active verb, directed, and quantify. Don't just say that you increased revenue. You want to say you've increased revenue by X%, how that helped the organization grow, and basically the results. Right? Lots of people can say that they helped an organization's membership increase, but I don't know what that means as a hiring manager. Did it increase by 10%, 50%? That's what you want to show in your resume. Your experience, it's going to show past behavior. Keep in mind, past behavior is an indicator of future behavior. So if I, as a human resource manager, see where you increased this organization, you helped this organization grow, that's an indicator of how you will perform for me. Show results. That is what's going to make a powerful resume. Don't just say you can do something. You can plan a meeting, that you can manage a staff. Show the results of you being able to do that. Many people will ask me, how far back in my professional experience should I go, in my work history? Typically what I suggest to folks, and again, I'm making general statements here. This might not apply to everyone. Typically, I don't have people show their work experience prior to the last 15 years in detail. Now, what I mean by that is you still want to show what your experience was. You still want to show where you worked, what some of the skills were, but you don't need to go into a lot of detail about it. Because face it, the world of work is so rapid today, and the speed of work and the knowledge of what we need to be learning about our industries is forever changing, that what you might have learned 25 years ago might not be as relevant as it is today. But I want to be sure we all understand that if you do have experience prior to the last 15 years that might be relevant, you include that. Every resume, every situation is different. You can go ask 10 people suggestions on your resume, and you're going to get 15 different responses. You have to do what's right for you. This is your marketing piece. You have to be comfortable with your marketing piece. So if you want to emphasize something that you did 20 years ago, go ahead and include it. What I want to do is provide you with some general tips on how to create the most powerful resume that you possibly can. All right, so we have your professional experience. Next section typically is your education. Some people prefer not to show dates, especially if they might be more senior. I'm a big believer in showing dates. Eventually they're going to find out what your age is anyway or close to it. Why not show them that from the beginning? And if that's not something that they're interested in, then you probably don't want to be working in that kind of organization anyway. So I'm a big believer in showing education dates. The next section, typically I have folks include either any type of membership, affiliation that might be relevant, professional organizations. As a hiring manager, if I see that you're involved with an organization or association where you're going to be meeting like-minded people, that you're continuously developing yourself, that says something about you. So I encourage folks to put in any type of professional affiliation as well. So in general, there are 3 different types of resumes. Chronological, which is the one that we typically see as hiring managers, human resources managers. It's one that we outline your experience based on your employers in a chronological format. Another type of resume that we are seeing more and more of is a functional resume, one that is based on your skill set versus a job title. Now, I will tell you, many hiring managers are not accustomed to looking at a functional resume, because typically a functional resume was developed if you had something to hide. But now, with more and more people changing different professions, moving from one sector to another sector, they are selling themselves, they're marketing themselves based on their skill set and not a job title. I will tell you though, a functional resume can be very difficult to write, and I would suggest that you do some research on how to write the best type of functional resume that you can. I suggest to folks nowadays you write more of a targeted or a hybrid resume, one that's sort of a combination, which is why I like this idea of having a summary of qualifications at the top that shows the breadth of your experience, the breadth of your skills in the very beginning, and then you go into the chronological format. Again, if you can get their attention in the very beginning, it's going to make a powerful resume for you. So that's 3 different types of resumes. Lots of information on the internet if you want more information. I just wanted to cover that briefly. Critical to a resume today, you want to determine what are key words, not only of what you have to offer, what the employer is looking for, but key words for your industry, especially if you're looking to transition from one industry to another industry. Know the key words, know the competencies of that industry. Again, know what the employer is looking for, know what you have to offer. You need to marry those two. Many folks will ask me, how do I know what key words are? Well, you look at the job description. Look at some of the words that are being repeated over and over again. If you see the words directed, managed, supervised, trained, marketed, developed, those are key words. And speaking of marketing, you want to be sure that your resume has marketing language in it. Language that sells. I mentioned earlier, make it aggressive, yes, and confident language too. When you're writing your cover letter, not I think I can do this, I believe I can do this, you know you can do it. Show confident language in your resume, which will, by the way, and I know this program isn't on interviewing, but that will help you prepare for your interviewing. Let's spend a couple minutes talking about highlighting your accomplishments, because I will tell you this is what separates you from your competition. Your accomplishments, your successes, your stories. You want to prepare especially under your professional experience, your stories, so that as I'm looking at this, I see, okay, this is the situation that you were in. The actions that you took were these, which resulted in. So highlighting your key accomplishments in a way that, and by the way, you're not going to use the language, this is a situation I was in, these are the actions I took, okay? But you want to start creating these stories, not just for your resume, but when you are actually in the interview, where you can articulate your accomplishments, what the situations were when you helped an organization, the actions that you took. And this is where some people get hung up because they don't like necessarily to say that you led the team. Well, we did it as a team. Well, did you lead the team? If that's the case, show you led the team. That's an active verb. Show what the action is. You led the team, which resulted in. I can't emphasize enough this result piece. You've got to show today results. That's what I mean by highlighting your accomplishments. And all of your accomplishments in your professional experience should then tie back to your summary of qualifications. So what do I mean by marketing language? Here's an example. Many people, and I see this a lot of times on resumes, and it might not be this specific example, but you know what I mean. increased sales of corporate security services. Well, big deal. What does that mean? What you want to be able to do is articulate and have in your resume something like increased corporate security sales by 43% and secured 12 new accounts, generating over $6 million in new revenue. That's what I mean by highlighting your accomplishments. That's what I mean by showing the situation, the action, and the result. Think about it. You've hired people in the past, perhaps, or you might be in the future. If you got a resume that says that you increased sales of corporate security services, and you got another one come across your desk or on your computer that says increased corporate security sales, yada, 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 right? Which are you going to take a second look at? Most likely it's going to be the second one, because they're showing their results. They are showing their past accomplishments. They're highlighting their accomplishments. Conducted vendor negotiations which reduced expenses. Is that going to separate you from your competition? No. But what will separate you from your competition, because it's your story, it's your unique story, is that you slashed expenses by 23% within 6 months by negotiating key vendor contracts. That's what's going to separate you from your competition. That's your story. No one else can say they did that. This is your unique story. This is what I mean by marketing language. This is what I mean by showing results. Sold services to companies across the East Coast. Big deal. What I would recommend you say is something like, recruited to revitalize stagnant sales and revenue declining profit performance in East Coast markets. Now, here's an example of, were we able to put a number in? Were we able to quantify it? Not really, but here's an example of how you can show an accomplishment, you can show an action without showing a specific number. People will also say to me, well, Marshall, is a 2-page resume okay? Well, of course it is. Now, if you're just starting out, if you're more entry level, then usually you can get your experience or maybe your volunteer, your mentorships you might have had, some internships you've had on 1 page. But if you're mid to senior level, you should be on 2 pages by now. And I would question it if you're not on 2 pages and you are more senior level. Just be sure, by the way, on your second page, you have your name in page 2. You'd be surprised how many people forget to do that. How do I format my resume? How do I send it electronically, Marshall? How does all this work? Okay, first of all, I'm not tech savvy to tell you exactly how to do it. But what I will tell you is that this is always changing. Typically in the past, folks were sending it as a Word document, and that was being received okay. Then there was computer glitches, yada, 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 for whatever reason, and so people moved over to a PDF format where you actually took a picture of your resume and that's how you sent it. That's changing now too, because I'm having more and more folks say, my computer department will no longer allow me to download Acrobat, which is what I need for PDF, right? So what I'm having folks do now is they send it in both a Word document and PDF. Before you do that, though, is you want to be sure that you're sending your resume to a few people to have them look at it, to see how it was transmitted. Just as in the past when we sent to people to ask them to do spell check and to proofread it, now you want to be sending it to people to see how it's transmitted. Because as we all know, what shows up on our screen isn't necessarily the way it's going to show up on the receiver end. And again, you want to be cautious with this PDF because people say to me, well, Marshall, if I send it as a PDF, that's okay. That's not necessarily true anymore. So I would suggest you send it as a Word document, a PDF. By the way, for a cover letter, you want to use that typically in the body of the email, and then have your Word document and your PDF as an attachment. And when it comes to sending your resume, don't have your resume, the title or the name of your file read revised resume 2, right? You want to have it resume 4 and then whatever your name is. I used to say, as an example, resume for Marshall Brown, and then people would say, Marshall, why would my resume say resume for Marshall Brown? So I can't say that anymore. So don't use resume for Marshall Brown, resume for whatever your name is. or resume for your name for this organization. Right? Personalize it. Font size. Many people ask me about font size and type, by the way. Unless you're a graphic designer, I would encourage you to keep it simple. A simple font like Arial, Times New Roman numeral. A font that is going to be consistent for many people. I would also avoid a lot of bolding and italics. I've seen a lot of resumes where the resume writer attempts to bold things to stick out, and what winds up happening is most of the resume is bold. I would avoid using bold. Don't use a lot of italics. You never know how that's going to transmit when it's done electronically. Don't use a lot of bolding. Don't use a lot of underlining. Keep it simple. As a final point, proofread. Proofread it again, and then you proofread it again. Because I will tell you that spell check doesn't always pick it up. You don't want to be sending a document to someone that isn't grammatically correct or has a spelling error. You need to proofread your resume and your cover letter. This is a document about you. This is your marketing tool. You want to be sure that you proofread it, and then you send it to someone else and have them proofread it. And then you send it to someone else and you have them proofread it as well. Critical today. You know, we're all in a hurry to get things done. This is too important. Okay, let's do a quick recap of what we talked about today. 1, sell what the company wants and not necessarily what it is that you're looking for. Figure out where that meeting point is. What you're looking for, what they're looking for, that's what you want to be selling. Page 1 is critical. If you don't engage them on page 1, typically they won't read the second page. I've told you how to do that. You write a strong summary of qualifications at the top. You have your active verbs on the left-hand side. HR manager will read the top, and then they'll scan the left-hand side. That's why I want you to get your active verbs out on the left-hand side. Use the language of your target audience. Remember how I talked earlier? You want to do the work for them, because if they have to figure out, okay, this is what Marshall means by this is what I need, how does that translate? They're not going to do it. Use the language of your target audience. Also, this thing about using I's and me's, forget it. We know it's about you. You don't need to say, I did this, I led this, I managed this. We know it's about you. Don't use I's and me's in your resume. Organize the content to work for you. Typically what happens during an interview is that the hiring manager or the human resource person will have your resume in front of them, and they're going to ask you some questions. Well, tell me about a time when you did this. What were the actions? So use the resume and format the resume that you're able to talk to your resume. And you're able to bring out the key points of your resume during the conversation that you have with the hiring manager. Tell them what they need to know. Show them how you can help them to grow the organization, how you have done it in the past, and how you are the best person to help them solve their problems. So I hope that you're walking away with a few tips to how to create that powerful resume for yourself. If you'd like additional information about not only resume tips, but how to be a more effective leader, how to build an effective team, communication skills related to performance improvement for yourself, for your staff, for your organization, I do have a monthly newsletter that I send out. It's complimentary, and this is where you can go to sign up for it.